Hey everyone, welcome to GTM Field Notes, a Syft series where we talk to GTM leaders and founders about what is actually changing in the field, not the theory, not the LinkedIn hype, but the real workflows, experiments, failures, and lessons showing up in real revenue teams. I'm Imran Patel, founder and CEO of Syft. At Syft, we spend a lot of time thinking about buyer signal, who's showing intent, which signals actually matter, and how sales and marketing teams can act on those signals without creating more noise. Today, I'm joined by my friend and co-host, Greg Kennedy, founder of Vibe Your SaaS and a three-time CMO himself. And we're talking with my friend and a fellow co-founder, Greg Bayer. Greg is currently CEO and co-founder of Tailor AI. Before that, he led engineering work at Magical, LinkedIn, and Pulse, which was acquired by LinkedIn, I believe, where he built large-scale relevance, content, learning, growth, and AI systems. Thanks for joining us today, Greg.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get started. So you have a very interesting founder story. So tell us about Tailor AI. What do you do? And then what made you start Tailor AI?
So, by the way, I'm getting a slight echo. I don't know if that is a concern or not, but maybe I'll just keep going and see if it's a problem. Okay, let me dive in. So Tailor is a tool that lets you really take your website and match its content to all the intents that you have coming in. And we started Tailor because we saw the power of AI, and we started looking around and talking to marketers about what are the problems and pains that could be solved by AI. And we realized that the big ad platforms or social networks or whatever had already been doing a lot of work to try to really personalize and even bring AI to bear to get a very personal message out there for every intent at the top of the funnel. But when it came to the landing page or the website itself, which is really the main experience that the brand owns, it just wasn't happening. Even though there were many tools, and it's not like the beginning of landing page tools, right? Landing page tools have been around for 15, 20 years. But even with all those tools, those like WYSIWYG editors and whatnot that came before, the reality is that most brands were still only building like one landing page per quarter. And they were reusing landing pages or their homepage for all these different intents that were now being created at the top of the funnel. And there was a clear like opportunity if you could make it super easy to do that. If you could remove the friction such that a marketer would actually do the work to create those pages. The reality is those WYSIWYG tools still took hours to build those other variants of pages. And the reality is that just didn't compute. And then the targeting and A/B testing was always separate as well. And so we started building on this problem. And we realized very quickly that with the new age of LM-powered AI tools, we could do code generation that would allow a personalized experience very quickly. And we could add in things like targeting and A/B testing and do it in a way that it takes almost no time to do it, right? So our goal was always like, could we do this in 5 minutes? So a marketer with no technical resources can set up personalization for a new intent in 5 minutes. And it's been fast forward a year and a half, and I think we have achieved that. But where we are now going is even more exciting, which is actually around fully automating the loop of having the AI look at the data that's coming in. What are the intents? What are the possibilities? What are the mismatches? And what are the CRO opportunities? And then basically suggest tests, pre-build those tests, and then pause for a quick human review, and then say, go ahead and start those 10 tests, and then learn from those and then loop around again. So that's what we're working on now.
In my experience, it actually was really difficult to do. That's why it didn't get done as much. So I'd love to hear more about like what's working and what you guys are focusing on, right? Because I think the premise, okay, we want to have a bunch of like customized landing pages. We understand why that's valuable. I don't think anyone needs to be sold on that, right? Like every marketing team, like, of course, that's what they want. They struggle with it because like, actually, I'll give you like, I think the core reasons are like the team is already focused on developing the creative for the advertising. And you can see the advertising performance drop if you don't have great creative, if it's not segmented. Like it's a very one-to-one relationship with like, Are we saving money? Are we being efficient with our ads? Of course we do that, right? The landing page side isn't quite as obvious. And so I think it took perhaps like a second priority. And then like my experience was like, it was more work than you want. You jump in there and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't actually going to be like 5, 10, 20 minutes. This is maybe like an all day thing. This is like a lot of effort. So I'd love to just hear more about like what's changed, and then I want to get in some of the more granular details too about like what you're seeing.
Sure. So I guess what's changed is that now if you have the right tooling, you have AI to assist you with every aspect of the personalization. And so it can just be so much faster. And especially for less technical people too, you might want to change the copy on a headline, but then the headline is too big. So then you have to actually resize it and restyle it. And then that's more work. And that's what would have led you to a few more hours futzing around with the tool. But now you could just say, hey, AI, make this smaller. And it just does. And then it's ready to go, right? It's the power of that being brought to bear. But I wanted to get around to what you were asking in terms of like what's really working. What's really working that we see from our customers, and I think as we work with design partners, we're building up more and more playbooks of what really works. But I think the number one thing that we're seeing is when you have a lot of intent at your ad level or your top of funnel. Let's say the most obvious situation is like when you have Google SEM and you have keywords, because keywords carry a lot of intent. And if you have a lot of different keywords and you have one landing page, which is true of many brands, right? Especially let's say you take a platform type product that has many use cases. And we have seen that just by tailoring the headline, the main CTA, and maybe the subheadline, you can get a big lift. Like you could get lowest lift we're seeing is like 10%. And then but the highest lift is like 200%, right? So it depends a lot on exactly how much intent is conveyed and how much mismatch there is in the page that's being landed on. That is the power that you can get. And then while you're doing it, you can also be improving the conversion rate optimization aspects of the page also, because you've got a nice tight A/B testing loop. And so, for example, things like one of our customers has a CTA that says download now because they're a freemium product and they want them to download the app and then pay later. And just by adding a special little download icon on that CTA, they actually got a massive increase over just personalizing the headline and the CTA to match the intent. So the combination of the two is what got them to like 200% lift on the campaign. So that's the thing that we see working. Another thing that we see working a lot is, again, like some like very well-known like tactics in CRO, but things that often people don't do because they're just too hard to do, like making a page a squeeze page, or people call it different things. But basically hiding the nav such that there's more focus on the CTA. Not always, but only for certain paid intent where you don't want them to be browsing around. They already had an intent, like let's get them to go ahead and go into the checkout funnel. And so that's something that our tool makes it super easy to say, basically make this a squeeze page, or you can just hover over each element and say hi. And then you've got a variant that is, you can very quickly test this concept, which has always been a well-known concept, but it's been difficult to implement. And anyway, I'll pause there. I think we can pin another topic for in a minute, which is like the political internal side of this, because I think sometimes tools like Tailor also help to overcome some of the social or political barriers inside organizations that I can talk about.
I think that's a very rich one that we can go after. I think we have probably something queued up along those lines. I think on the optimization side, so here's a little bit of a question around this, maybe a loaded question. So like there have been personalization companies, right? Like there is Mutiny, there is like Tofu, who's like Lynn, who's the founder, right? Or somewhat. There is now Flint, which is like Michelle started. I knew her a little bit when she was at Warp. So there are like a bunch of these startups coming in and try to do personalization. And some of them, I think Flint specifically, I think it focuses on like AEO and like making agent optimized pages. Are you like, where do you see things going? Do you still see things around like TRO, and a lot of that has been like optimized for humans, right? Like people look at ads and they come in and you want to make sure that they convert. Where do you see the focus going? Do you still think that like humans would be the only people like worth optimizing for? Are you addressing that in your product? I know yours is more like paid focused, like paid marketing, which still is very human oriented, but curious, where do you see things going?
I think it is like, obviously AEO and GEO is like very top of mind for people because it's being totally shaken up and it's a new It's a new thing, and you have to figure it out if you want to. It's a very important channel to solve, and so I understand why Blend and others, and then like there's a company in the same VC as me called AirOps that does a lot of that as well. And there's many of them, right? Obviously, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think to answer your question directly, agents are here to stay, and I think they are going to become increasingly part of the ecosystem of how content information is consumed and processed and decided upon and filtered back to humans. I think humans are going to remain in the loop, but agents are going to be more and more involved. So I think making sure your product, your brand, your site, your whatever, everything is consumable by agents is very important. But that's not the problem that we're focusing on at Tailor. So at Tailor, we're still focusing on that human experience of if you have an intent and you land on a site and you are getting something totally different than what you just clicked on, you're like, well, wait a minute, is this even for me? And then you have a much higher chance to bounce out, right? We're trying to solve that. And from a user experience point of view, we're trying to make it like you walk into a store and then the salesperson comes up to you and says, what's your problem, sir? Like, can I help you? And then they personalize the next paragraph to what you say, right? So like ideally we are able to have websites behave more like web apps and they're smarter, right? So like I worked at LinkedIn for 9 years. So like everything we did at LinkedIn was always thinking about what signals do we have to personalize the feed and every surface of the product to what we know about the user. And that's tremendously effective. And that's part of why LinkedIn is so successful. But marketing sites are so flat and they're so like, it just feels like you're living in the past when you're working on a marketing site. So like, I think we have to bring the power of like these very modern web apps or mobile apps, any app that is really personalizing every aspect to the user marketing and to marketing experiences to bring them into like this world. And I think AI allows us to do that, but there's just like with everything with AI, there's an integration phase of figuring out how to actually bring it to bear. And that's what we've decided to work on. In terms of the other thing that we've taken out as our little like first wedge for Tailor is that we're really focused on existing websites. So a lot of web products like Lovable or Flint or whatever, they're about generating net new pages. It's very easy, very powerful to do with AI. And I've personally, I wrestle with, should we start building that? Because that's so powerful too. And it's ultimately part of the whole platform if you were to become a platform, right? But as a small startup, I think we have to start narrow. And what we've really staked out, which there's not a lot of other people doing very well, is really this idea of like, can I bring AI to bear to my existing website? I don't want to start over. I don't want to just build net new pages. And I just want to make sure that my landing pages or my experience of my site is personalized. And the vision that we have is like you drop in one line of JavaScript, a tag on the page, and suddenly your whole site is personalized, your existing site, right? Eventually that will expand to like, okay, we can also generate new pages, and then maybe we can help solve some of the AEO, GEO stuff, but that's not what we're starting.
I think that's an incredibly powerful way to deploy your thing. Getting the tag on the website is usually like a struggle sometimes. We have the same thing like the Syft tag, but once you have it, it's like a set it and forget it, like works. And then you can just like roll out new things for them because the tag is there. But I think it's a great, even in like, I know tags are somewhat old school, considered old school, but they're actually an amazing mechanism even in 2026.
Well, and it's actually not, we've not found too much friction with the tag. We have like a one-click install via Google Tag Manager too. So like it can be pretty frictionless even for, we were a little worried about that in the beginning, but that hasn't proven to be a major bottleneck in terms of getting people on board.
So I have a follow-up question. So like this on the theme of like what was previously hard and like was it historically, was content generation the bottleneck, or the more like the data and the experimentation and A/B testing loop was the bottleneck? And now that like with AI, content generation obviously is like one of the sweet spots for it. Where has the bottleneck shifted in personalization? What still remains difficult?
Well, I think it depends on which organization you're talking to, right? Because there's still many organizations that are on like an old school CMS that's very hard for them to edit. And they have all the same problems that were there 5 years ago. They haven't taken advantage of any of the new modern stuff, right? And they're like on WordPress or like Contentful or something, right? Very like clunky, and like they're having developers build like modules, which then they have their marketers either like drop in or not, right? But then they have to wait weeks for their developers to build this new like module. And it's like, that's the past, right? But many organizations are still in that world. And so like many times we can just help them jump out of that and leapfrog all the way forward. Then there's other organizations that are more modern where they are moving pretty quickly already. Maybe they're using something like Webflow or Shopify if they're on the B2C side, right? And they're pretty nimble with it. But at the same time, they still, even though they can maybe make page changes pretty quickly, it's harder for them to do like targeting. Like they want to target a specific ad, or they want to target a specific segment, and that we can do location-based targeting. We can do mobile versus desktop. We can do enrichment like you guys do, right? So we can, for B2B side, we can see like who is actually like what size is the company, what industry they are, what role the person is, right? And like these targeting aspects are not built into the basic landing page builder. So like there's a fundamental capability gap, and to roll out a separate product to add that in is sometimes hard. And so anyway, so we solve that. But then the other thing is that in addition to that, they need A/B testing, and they want rigorous A/B testing, right? And so they could use something like Optimizely, but Optimizely is super clunky and old and slow and expensive. And so like we slot in as like a very easy to use Optimizely replacement as well. And then we bring the full package, bring them the capabilities of quick page changes with targeting, with A/B testing. That's where we are today. And then we have a few other features too. We have like a competitor intelligence product and an ad alerting product, but those are off to the side. Where I'm really most excited about is this loop that we're building where we have an analytics feature. So once you drop in the tag, you're also getting analytics like Google Analytics, which is redundant in most cases because everyone has Google Analytics or they have Amplitude or something. So they're already seeing that. But what this allows us to do first and foremost is give you like a very performance marketing oriented dashboard that's like really slicing things based on like your UTMs and everything. And if you connect your ad platform, we can join and show you the full funnel from your ads into your landing experience, into even your downstream if you connect a downstream data provider. But what that also enables is it gives the AI something to learn from immediately. And then the AI can basically say, oh, look, all these things are coming in and these have lower conversion rates and these have higher. And now there's an opportunity to fix that's immediately visible to the AI. You don't need to start spending hours and hours with the AI to tell it what to think about. It actually just reads all the raw data, and then it can come up with the test ideas. And then now we're enabling our tailoring tools to be like NCP powered, right? So like the AI can use those tailoring tools to just build the pages for you and then get those basically ready with one click to launch.
I see.
Very cool.
Is that like, sorry, Gregory, go ahead.
I want to jump in. I actually want to like change topics here and like talk about AI and how you guys are using it. There's so much discussion right now about the implementation side across the board with AI, right? And I'm just going to assume you're using it, right? So I guess the more direct question is like, what do you think about the costs? Like that's been in the news. It was even today that Sam Altman came out and he basically said that some people are overspending. So I'm just curious, like, what do you think about like token maxing? Is the era of token maxing over? Like, how are you guys handling this? There's a whole bunch of other stuff I could bring up, but let's start there. And I just want to get your perspective on AI usage and costs.
And like, Gregory, is your question limited to like, it's not limited to just coding and engineering, right? Just overall like AI use across all.
There's no limit. So I think it's actually a great like addendum, or because we could maybe even take up the entire like rest of the call with this. First, let's talk about like your own process, like where you guys are using AI, where you're getting value, and how you're managing the costs. I think that part's really important. And then we can go into like, there's the other aspects to this as well that matter, because like, is there costs that are passed on to the customers because they have to consume tokens, right? So there's a lot of different ways to angle it to approach this. Let's just start with like what you guys are doing internally and what you're seeing and your perspective on that.
Makes sense. So look, I think maybe I have a slightly different perspective on this as an engineer. Like I was an engineer long before. For the last 20 years, I've been an engineer before I was a CEO. all the CEO stuff is new to me, but the engineering stuff feels very comfortable. And part of being an engineer is understanding how to optimize things and understanding where like scaling factors and orders of magnitude of like that can drive various like bottlenecks and costs, right? So like to me, optimizing tokens is very natural. And we have not, as a company, spent very much money on AI, but we use AI all the time. We use AI constantly for developing our product, first and foremost, right? But I think a couple things to go into. So first of all, I think the unlimited plan or the per month plans that Anthropic and OpenAI offer are extremely good deals on tokens. And I think when you see stories in the news about organizations spending a ton of money, it's because they're on the enterprise plan, and the enterprise plans are actually geared towards getting them to like the like fixed monthly amount is actually capped, and then they go into overage. Then and a ton of and basically have unlimited overage. And I think it's very carefully designed that way. Those organizations can afford to spend like hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on tokens. And
Do you all just sign up for personal plans?
so we don't do that. So we experimented with the team plan and we ended up paying a lot of money for that. And then we actually went back to personal plan because the personal, like the Claude personal plan, $200 a month is like almost impossible for our engineers to max out.
Yep.
So we can code like all day long, every day, and not exceed $200 a month, which is, I think, a lot less than most organizations are paying for tokens. $200 a month is a very affordable rate for an engineer to become like multiple orders of magnitude, not orders of magnitude, maybe like our engineers are probably like 10 times as effective as they would be without Claude.
Even the $100 plan on Claude that I think I am on is actually generally pretty decent.
And I the $100 plan, but if you're a very active coder and you code all day long every day, we could run out of it. But then the $200 plan, you'll be fine. But then I met this guy, a friend of mine is an entrepreneur, and he was complaining about how much he was spending on tokens. And I realized he had a team plan and he was on the $100 a month team plan. And I looked at his Claude setup because I was trying to help him figure out why his credit card bill was so high. And it was like he was spending $200 a day on overage. So he was spending $100 a month plus $200 a day. So that's how you're getting these giant like news articles. Whereas he probably could have just been on the $200 a month plan and used just as many tokens.
Is your token usage mostly dominated by coding use cases, or are there other ones that are surprising?
No, it's pretty much dominated by coding use cases, to be honest. I also have like a $20 a month ChatGPT subscription that I use for a lot of like business type questions, like ChatGPT for business, for like legal questions and stuff like that. But that's like the $20 a month is sufficient, actually. So that's almost nothing from a business point of view.
And then how about because your product itself is net?
The product itself uses tokens, and we use both OpenAI latest models and Claude latest models. Increasingly, we're moving towards actually putting Claude code into our product, into the core, like running Claude code remotely in the cloud. And for our customers, it's been a big step function up in the.
Wait, help me understand exactly what that means.
Sure. Basically, the difference between using the latest Claude Opus model directly and using it through Claude Code, it's the same model on both sides, same cost per tokens, same everything, but there's a harness that is provided by Claude Code, which is like a bunch of rules where it's like basically going back and forth with the model to decide whether it should spin up another sub agent, should it spin up 50 sub agents, should it use some of the local tools that are available in a Unix or Mac computer, and those are incredibly powerful because sometimes it will go and write a little script that will then do something, which then could have cost you a ton of tokens. And instead of doing a ton of tokens, it will just get the answer back. and it will cost almost no tokens because the script runs locally using the local CPU.
I'm genuinely curious, like about this. So, in terms of like, what is the feature that this thing powers in your product?
It powers this automated loop thing that I'm talking about, which is not yet released.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
So it's basically the ability to go and look at all the data we know about a website and also then do like scraping of pages to look at what those pages look like, and then use our own MCP tools to build the tailoring. So these are like very elaborate workflows with hundreds of steps. And Claude Code Harness just does a lot better at those very complex workflows than trying to, basically you're reinventing Claude Code by using Opus directly yourself. And then you have to do all the tool stitching to make that happen.
That's your workflow execution engine, essentially.
Exactly. We realize that you can be 10x better at that complicated workflow by just leveraging the best in class one, which is Claude Code. It's a little bit tricky to get it to set up and run on a remote environment, but it's something that can be done.
We also have an upcoming feature. It's in beta. We're testing out with a few customers, and very similar pattern where we use a separate harness that we self-customize, but like we call it the escape hatch. And so the escape hatch is like a thing that our customers can talk to, and it allows them to do some arbitrary stuff that is like usually not in the product right now. So, and then over a period of time, obviously we'll make it, it's a way to test out new features without building out like a lot of machinery. And then we can fold it into the main product over a period of time. At least that's how we are thinking about it. But it's great. It's great that like you have that. Well, it's great to hear that you are also thinking in a similar way. It's just a very different way of building software now than like that was.
Absolutely. And back to the original question about token usage, I would say until now, our token usage has been really minimal because basically people would only use tokens from us when they were tailoring a web page. So we explicitly designed it that way because we knew that it would be A, too expensive, and B, too slow to try to run an LLM call every time a visitor comes to a site. So we don't do that, right? Just pre-build the variants. Like if we know that there are 100 intents for this website, we can pre-build 100 variations. That only is a one-time token cost. And then when we serve those variants, it doesn't cost anything. It costs us processing and network and everything, the normal stuff, but not AI tokens, right? And so that's kept our costs very much under control for running the product. Now with the new Claude-based loop of like AI identifying ideas and running them, it's a little bit more expensive. Like a single session could be multiple dollars, right? Like very quickly. But I think the value is going to support it. I think that we're going to be able to go to our customers and say, look how powerful this is. Like you'll need to pay us a little bit more. And this comes back to your point about passing the costs back to customers. I think we do plan to do that. I don't think we think that it's going to make our pricing like 10x higher, but maybe just a little bit more.
Do you do any usage-based pricing now?
All our pricing is actually usage-based. So we price based on volume of visitors that are going through tailored experiences or a number of enriched credits, right? Because we have to pay for enrichment credit. So that's another thing we price on. But basically, we're trying to align as much with value-based pricing as possible. That's far true north of where we want to be. We want to be in a mode where we're like, we helped you earn $1 million, therefore we charge you like some fraction of that, maybe 10%.
How far away are you from that outcome-based pricing? Because a lot of like, I had like 5 conversations at an event yesterday with other founders around like outcome-based pricing. I guess in your space, it's actually outcomes are performance marketing. I think me and Gregory have this conversation where like outcome is like in performance marketing is one of the most like you have very crisp definition of what ROI is, right? Because it's so on. And so do you think that like you will get there like anytime soon for your own pricing?
I think we're already close because typically what we do is we'll run some tests for people as a early trial, right? Because we're pretty early and we're not even necessarily charging at that stage. And then once the value is clear, like look how much lift you got off these experiments. The conversation around pricing is basically, what if we could scale this for you? How much would that be worth? And then can we back into pricing that makes sense based on our volume-based pricing or visitor-based pricing? And then that's where we are. And in some cases, some of our customers, they were able to extrapolate it to actually their like annual impact of the performance campaigns. So you basically were able to say like, oh, we're going to be charging you right about 30% of what you're getting out of the product.
Because like, I guess in your world, you could just have a holdout at any point of time, and then you have your system, and you could just say, compared to the holdout, my system gave you this much lift. So like, I should probably like charge you based on that lift, right?
And we have I'm excited about this feature. It's not released yet. We have an internal alpha feature where if you connect your ad account, we can calculate the value of your experiments on Tailor in dollar value through various means. Like we can use the reported conversion value to Meta or Google, or we can, if you don't have that, you don't want to use that, we can let you put in your own LTV, or we can actually just extrapolate based on like the amount you spent on ads. If let's say you got an average of a 17% lift, what does that turn into in a dollar value? And we can put that on every experiment and overall for the account as well.
Pretty cool.
Well, get to that value-based narrative, even though we might not fully get there, we want to keep that as the direction.
Like it, like you're almost closing the loop, right? Like you're able to see the ad impression, see the click, see the landing, see them convert, right? And then use all of that data to improve. The other thing that as like the ad tech nerd, the thing that I like about this is that everything on the landing page I control as like if I'm the customer, I'm the CMO or whatever, right? And the ad experience, they don't control a lot of things. And I feel like in general, they keep reducing the amount of control I have and automating things, removing data that I was able to collect, just making it more and more difficult for me to like control that, get it the way that I want it to work or collect data from it, right? So with your tool, I get the full landing page experience and I'll always own that, right? And so why not spend all that effort and energy? This is actually a great argument for the tool that like I never actually used internally. It was like, we have total control. We get all of the data. Well, no one can tell us no. Facebook all the time, turn this off. We're discontinuing that format. We've decided not to do this. You control like the creative execution. That's basically it at this point. On the landing page, I get everything. And so why not maximize that, collect all of that data, and then do whatever I can to optimize the complete loop? Like, can I take some of this data and put it back into the ad process? There must be some signal for what I'm collecting here that's going to inform what's happening over there. So
so that's on our roadmap as well, helping customers with like the LTV assignment for customer and then passing that back to the ad.
Exactly.
Once we see what they're doing on the page, we can do that better.
It's like underexplored. There's not a lot of people who got it to that granular. Like I've used Optimize and these other tools, but they weren't really designed with that in mind.
Another thing I would just call out is that our vision is very much beyond the landing page. So like we're starting with the landing page because that's first surface, but like we want to optimize the entire marketing web experience. So that could be like the whole marketing site, and it can even go into the product a little bit if it's a web product, right? Because we can go across the login boundary and start to help optimize that initial like onboarding experience or whatever. Now, we're trying to stay in the stakeholder of marketing. So like typically that hands off to product. So that's why we stop there. But fundamentally, the product there's no reason the product couldn't continue to personalize.
That's interesting. What have we not asked you that you think we should talk about, right? Like there's a lot of topics, there's a lot of things we can talk about, particularly like in the AI space or in GTM space. I'm curious to hear from you, like what does you think is interesting? Maybe what are challenges that you face? Like your opportunity to drive the conversation.
The challenges, sorry, just to give me a little bit more.
So how about like challenges on the GTM side that you see your customers face, right? Yeah, let's bring it back to the customers, people that you're trying to enable, marketing teams, CMO, marketing people, right? Like, what are you seeing from them? What are you hearing from them?
So back to like that thing that we pinned earlier, which is the internal frictions that can arise, right? So like one of the things that we saw actually even before, like right as I was starting Tailor, I was aware of some experiments that were going on at LinkedIn. And LinkedIn, as I said, has always been very data-driven. But actually the marketing teams at LinkedIn have had some of these same problems. And one of the things that LinkedIn figured out was that they were actually taking like 6 weeks between tests. And all they were doing was changing some copy. And what was actually taking that 6 weeks? Well, part of it was the engineering or whatever, and it's all slow inside a big company. But actually, the biggest part was the alignment on what copy they should actually run the test on. They couldn't agree. There's too many stakeholders, and they wanted to fight about what copy should we actually run. And it's none of it is based on data. It's all like just their intuition, right? I guess maybe it's based on some data, but fundamentally, it's very hard to know which copy variant is going to work. And what they did was they actually just went to a system where there was an AI multi-arm bandit exploit algorithm where they could just put in 100 copy ideas and just run them and see which one won because they had enough traffic. And that was very powerful. And they ended up getting millions of dollars of lift on their premium.
And where do you see that friction? Like, is that like between like brand marketing or content marketers and performance marketers, or are there some other groups? Like, what is the cause of that?
As you get into larger organizations, the idea that you have to be like perfect is the enemy of good, right? So like the idea that it's very expensive to run a test makes you waste more time arguing over should it be A or B or C,
right,
then you could just run all three, right? So that's one thing we've found is that by lowering that cost, you can just put aside some of those organizational and political things and just move very quick. The other thing is obviously getting alignment from a lot of our customers. They have to wait 2 weeks, right, for a change. Like their sites are run by engineering and they need to put in a ticket, and then the team runs on a 2-week sprint cycle. And it's a very efficient team, but they run on a 2-week sprint cycle. So they will never get any change in less than 2 weeks. Right?
It's designed for throughput, not for latency.
Exactly. So what happens is they might launch new ad campaigns and then they're like, well, should we make a new landing page for this? Well, but I might not even be running this campaign in a week. What if it doesn't work? Let me just wait and see if it first performs. And then that keeps going. And then the speed of new ideas on the creative side is so fast that they end up in this world where they basically just keep reusing the same landing pages because practically speaking, this friction of this 2-week delay. And then some organizations, it's worse because they first have to go through design and then into engineering, right? And then this is like the old process that was very standard and it's there to some extent for good reason. But that's why we've actually made some of our decisions in Tailor is that, again, why we don't build net new pages. We build off existing pages because the design language is already set. The existing copy is already set. So it's a small ask to say, could the marketer just have the creative freedom to run a few tests on top of this? We won't change too much, but we'll do it really quickly. And if it doesn't work, we'll turn it off. And it's what I've heard. Actually, I'm not a marketer as of like, I've only been in this marketing world for a couple of years, but before this, I've heard that it used to be more like that with ads. And then it hit some tipping point where the creative teams were like, okay, do anything you want with ads, because I know it has to move too fast. So maybe Gregory, you can comment on that. But is that true that it used to be harder to move quickly on ads, and then the social norm tipped towards like, okay, you can do anything on ads, but don't touch the pages. And then I guess we're trying to tip the social norm towards you could be more creative and fast on pages as well.
I think you're dead on. I think that like a lot of things have changed. Some of it's just cultural or the way people were used to doing things. They was like, I guess like, I feel comfortable saying today, our perspective on how people did things more than 10 years ago, it was like perhaps overly cautious. There was like too much focus on process, but a lot of that was because the systems and processes were like laborious and difficult and hard to roll back. So maybe the best way to describe it is like, I usually would talk to my teams about is I would give them a methodology and I would talk about things on a sliding scale of like how easy something is to roll back. If it's really hard to change it once we do it, think really deeply about that and get as much feedback as possible. If it's really easy to change, just like roll with it, right? And that's probably that dynamic probably describes a lot of things that are happening in marketing. So ads became easier and easier to change. They used to be like, they put them on like a cassette and they had to mail them out and they air on television. They were like impossible to change, right? Now you're like uploading
You're on yourself, Gregory.
been doing advertising a long time, right? Like, and like that stuff actually didn't go away till like 10 years ago. Like a lot of these systems actually were slow and difficult to use outside of the digital world, right? So if you go put a billboard up, you can't change it tomorrow. So it still exists. But I think you're correct. Go ahead.
I think the platforms have made it incredibly easy as well.
Totally.
I think you are doing the same thing, Greg, with Tailor, like more downstream of it, which is just once things become easier, it just unlocks a lot of stuff. And so now, like I had a follow-up question on it, which is that okay, the cost of experimentation is going to zero, so it's collapsing. Where do you see, given like from your experience, what has that unlocked? What have been the second order effects of it? And now that because of that, like now that like okay, well, like it's not political, you can move very fast. What does that unlock for people in general once they're successful with this new fast experiment?
Unlocks finding opportunities to improve conversion rates and revenue, and it unlocks opportunities to make better experiences for their users that were like hidden and lost. They were obscured by their inability to do many tests meant they could only get the most obvious wins. So there was like a ton of alpha left on the table that they weren't able to find. And I think the company that moves the fastest is the one that wins, right? The one that tries the most things. And that's true in many domains, but especially also in performance marketing, right? And that is to me what it has unlocked. I think there are very few organizations that have truly unlocked it. And I think that AI brings a whole nother layer to it, because I think one thing is getting out of your own way, your culture, your tools, and like getting to where you could make tests very quickly. But then there are just tests that you wouldn't think to run at all, right? And then AI can probably go into the weeds on some directions and pull in also best practices from other customers, deep sources of knowledge that maybe if you were like a 30-year veteran, you would know all of them, right? But most brands don't have only like these 30-year veterans working for them, right? So not everyone knows all the tricks, and then the tricks are always changing, right? So I think like it's just like, I think everyone's talking about like how AI is going to upend cybersecurity, right? Because in cybersecurity, it's a cat and mouse game of like, what attacks can you find? And then what defenses can you find? And then you constantly fight back and forth. And now, fortunately or unfortunately, we have AI playing both sides of that game. And so it's going to be crazy for a while until like all that settles down. It's the same in other search spaces. And I think optimization of web experiences is one of those search spaces.
That makes sense. GTM in general is just like this, like it has the same quality of like there is very temporal advantages that you have, and you keep on like making like the small changes that compound over a period of time, and experimentations like that as well. We are coming up on time. I think that's actually a very good note to end on, because I think that's especially like I think that part about like let the data make you move faster and that makes certain decisions apolitical, I think it was pretty insightful. I think this was again great conversation. Thank you for coming over, and hopefully like I'm super excited about like all the stuff that you talked about that has not been released yet, and so hopefully come out in the next few months, and then maybe you'll have like a follow-up in a year about like what are some of the other second order and third order effects that you have seen the pace of experiment, or once the cost of experimentation goes to zero.
Would love to do it, and absolutely agree with you about how this is very similar to other aspects of GTM. I think I stayed very focused on the web space, but obviously the same is true when you're doing outbound or when you're trying different social posting, or you're always trying to search for what works, and what works is always changing. I think what we're just trying to do is the web experience in that box of something that can be easily optimized, and not something that is just like left on the side as like dead space that no one wants to worry about because it's too hard, right? We're trying to like unlock